All right. So the recording has started. So welcome everybody to BSW Training Hub's lunchtime bite-size online ED&I events. Um, this is organized by myself. I'm Isaac Frank. I am a GP in Swindon, but I also hold the near peer fellow role in Swindon as well as the ED&I fellow role for the BSW Training Hub. So this is a new venture. We have started once a month episodes on various ED&I topics, just 30 minutes sessions, um, just within your lunch break, so you don't have to move anywhere, and that they are digestible, and they will be on catch up later on as well. So welcome everybody. Welcome Dr. Silvana Romero Brown. She was also the guest speaker for episode 1, and today's episode is going to be on unconscious bias. And if you do have questions, please feel free to raise your hand or to unmute yourselves, or even type the question in the chat box available. Hopefully, this session is enjoyable. I've attended this session before, and it's really good. So over to Dr. Silvana, and your mic is unmuted, so that's perfect.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Isaac. Thank you. So I'll move on to the first slide. So I'll introduce myself. So I'm Dr. Silvana Romero Brown. I'm a GP working in Gloucestershire. I'm also a GP trainer involved with both undergraduate and postgraduate GP training. I'm also so I guess my hat today is more with my EDI, Equality, Diversity, Inclusivity and Differential Attainment Training Programme Director role within the Southwest, working with the primary care school. So Isaac has asked me to talk to you today about unconscious bias. As Isaac said, I did run the session last month, which was around creating an inclusive workplace. I'm not, obviously a lot of the topics sort of overlap, but today's presentation is sort of something a little bit new. Unconscious bias, it probably to most of you isn't a new term or concept, I assume. And I think it's usually most of us at some point in our careers or educational sort of journey have probably come across the terminology and maybe had some sort of training. Certainly when you join an organisation, you're usually asked to complete an ED&I module, and it covers a little bit of unconscious bias and the theory. So hopefully this isn't really overlapping, maybe a bit of revision. But what I'd like to do is, as I said, maybe revise a little bit and sort of understand the concept of unconscious bias. Another terminology people sometimes refer to is implicit association. So we'll talk a little bit about that, talk a bit about types of biases that exist, talk about its relevance to the NHS, particularly with our roles, and then also something a little bit around identifying our biases and how we can manage and mitigate against biases and the impact of our unconscious biases. So I'm going to start with a video. It's only 2 minutes long, but I think it just describes it a little bit better, more succinct and visually. So hopefully this will work. If not, I've got another way of doing it through the YouTube. So if you could maybe Isaac, give me a thumbs up if it's working and the audio is working well for me. Okay. So the audio should come on.
Yeah, we can hear you.
So the short video really is just a refresher on how our unconscious minds work and influence our behaviours. And it talks a little bit about kind of our reflective thinking. So this is a thinking that sort of where we take time, we analyse, we use more cognitive function to make decisions, and that influences our behaviours. And our reflexive sort of more thinking where it's more of a reflex, more sort of an autopilot, and that's generally based on our previous experiences, our sort of gain knowledge, lived experiences, and also our social environment. It's an important concept to understand because it does, as I said, relate to some of the problematic types of behaviour that we might unknowingly contribute to a situation. And it's really important to us to consider, because different stereotypes often, and we often use that, and it affects the different stereotypes and expectations that we or others might have about our peers and our social groups, and this can influence how we treat them, what opportunities we might offer, the friendships we might make, and the language we might use. There's lots of evidence, wealth of evidence, that shows that unconscious bias significantly impacts the delivery and the experience in a classroom and the clinical education, and also in a workplace. So really, it's important to understand that an individual's experience isn't just down to themselves, but it's also really down to some of these experiences that they might have for as a result of social exclusion, due to some of these unconscious biased assumptions that some people might be making about them. So that's why it's an important concept for us to be aware of. So I'm going to ask just a couple of slides, very quick, just without thinking. I want you don't want to answer, but just in your own head, who out of these two individuals holds the fastest track record recorded in 1980? So some of us might assume it's the guy that chap on the left who's dressed all sportily and looks very fit and strong. It's actually the lady on the other side, on my left, your left, but it's Florence Dolores Griffith Joyner, also known as Flojo. He was an American track and field athlete and the fastest woman ever recorded, and it still holds the record 30 years later in the 100 and 200 meters. Very quickly, who out of these two individuals would you say was the best mechanical engineer? So again, our assumptions and our unconscious bias might assume that the gentleman in the right environment wearing the hard hat and laptop is the mechanical engineer. So it's actually the lady on the left, Yasmin Abdel Majid, born in Sudan. She moved to Australia when she was 2 years old and trained as a mechanical engineer. She now spends her time both working as an engineer and on oil and gas rigs, and is heading up Youth Without Borders, an organisation that she founded at 16 to empower young people as leaders of positive change through collaborative community initiatives. I've got a link at the end of the slide set to one of her TED Talks, which I really encourage you to listen to. It's really inspiring, and it's called "What Does My Headscarf Mean to You?" Really inspiring. Very quickly, which one of these animals are you most fearful of? So some of us, certainly I wouldn't want to be close to a crocodile, and I'd like to look at a lion from a very distance. However, mosquitoes are labelled the world's deadliest animal. Vector-borne diseases transmitted by mosquitoes actually cause the most deaths per year worldwide. I think actually the data from 2022 I looked up earlier was around 1 million deaths a year. Crocodiles have caused 1,000 deaths per year worldwide, whereas lions only cause 250 deaths per year worldwide. So this is just very brief, sort of fun example, I guess, of how our unconscious mind and kind of very kind of quick reflexive thinking might sort of come into some of our decisions that we make on very quick. And it often happens depending on the situation that we're in. Often it's time is a factor. We don't have time to sort of rationalize. If you see something coming towards you, scary lion, or you're gonna run, or things like that, you immediately make those sort of decisions on our own sort of knowledge base, really. So thinking a little bit about the previous slides, just as a sort of basis to get ourselves sort of starting to think, I want you to have a look at these. I've got a list here of sort of types of biases, which I'll explain a little bit more. But I want you to sort of, whilst we talk about them, I want you to think a little bit about how some of these types of biases might be presenting in our everyday lives, in our decisions that we're making and the interactions that we're having with others. At work or in our education environment, and in particularly how these might actually impact people with regards to career opportunities and progression, selection, and their own development and experiences. So affinity bias is often that as humans, we naturally sort of are more akin and more uncomfortable with like for like. We know that, we understand it, so we tend to be more comfortable with people or groups who are more like ourselves. So that can impact our decisions and sort of what we sort of expose ourselves to and allow others to be involved in as well. Confirmation bias is, as I said, it's things that we already know of, things that we've got in our own knowledge bases in the back of our brains that we've sort of get, and also then seeing that again and having it reaffirmed and confirmed. So, okay, well, that's what we thought. Let's confirmed it. So it sort of reinforces that thought process, and decision and belief. Attribution. So this is when we tend to sort of give differential attributions to different groups. And when we talk about out groups, so that's when we talk about out groups as people outside of the norm, I guess, our norm, and people who might, be perceived as others. And it's the sort of stereotype type of attributions, or the sort of the attributions that maybe are just we sort of come back from our own beliefs and our own kind of learning and our own sort of growing up experiences through childhood. The stereotype groups, which I mentioned as well, are thinking that sort of certain groups and certain people with certain characteristics, certain backgrounds, certain ethnicity, are better at things and or more comfortable or more apt at being that certain person, or performing in a certain way. So like, with the previous slide, we might assume that the man dressed all sporty, looking very fit and strong, would be much faster than the lady with very long nails, for example, who seemed, so that there's sort of that sort of stereotype feeling, and there's obviously more ingrained stereotype thoughts. Group thinking bias is, everybody else is thinking the same. I don't want to change the status quo. We go along with the group, we feel more comfortable with all the group's decisions. The halo effect is a little bit similar to attribution, where the assumption that somebody is better at something. There's the idea that females are better communicators, more empathetic. Male may be more better at sort of being more pragmatic, or leaders. There's sort of that sort of, oh well, they're sort of held as a halo and giving that sort of attribute. And it can lead to also to the microaggressions and behavioural manifestations, which are really really important for us to think about, because all of these types of biases and that often come from unconscious impact on the behaviour that we transmit often in our daily lives. So really, these microaggressions are really closely linked to our unconscious biases. Microaggressions are important for us to understand again, because it's sort of we need to understand to be able to appreciate the lived experience that quite often people who suffer microaggressions on a daily basis have. And it's often people who are, as you called, in the out group, who may be from marginalised groups, who tend to be more affected or more experience these microaggressions more commonly. They are often indirect and subtle, and often completely unintentional and outside of the awareness of the person or the group who are who are sort of using microaggressions or experiencing these. So it's really important for us to understand it, and it really to be able to kind of take any sort of action or call them out, or change ourselves. We need to understand the basis of where they come from, and these all come from our own unconscious biases, and as I said, sort of decisions and thoughts and beliefs that we make without analysing and thinking through and reflecting. So this is just a screenshot. It's slightly small writing, but I guess it's very recent, the NHS staff survey, which was done last year and published at the beginning of this year. And one of the things that I wanted to point out really was that the equal opportunities stats, which it says here that 56.40% of staff felt their organisation acted fairly with regard to career progression or promotion, regardless of ethnic background, gender, religion, sexual orientation, disability or age. And if you look, you can sort of see slightly in the brackets, there's been a very little change really since the NHS survey data from 2019. And 56% doesn't sound too bad, but that's half. That's half of the staff thinking that actually there's no that their organisation is fair and doesn't sort of there's no judgment or bias with regards to these sort of marginalised groups and features. Whilst you read the rest, I want to read you something which I often read in my presentations, which is an article from Nursing Times in 2020. And I just think it really sort of highlights the experiences that people can have. So start now. So the thing about racism is that it isn't always about spewing derogatory words. It's stereotyping, misconceptions, prejudgment, bias and microaggressions that silently manifest and trickle into healthcare services without you even realising. These things affect how you treat and interact with patients and colleagues who don't look like you. As a Black nurse in the NHS, you hesitate to speak out against injustice because you don't want to be written off with negative labels that are often used to describe Black people. Being a Black nurse in the NHS means living and breathing in a system that not only expects you to fail, but is designed to make you fail. You have fleeting moments of worry that people might not want to look after you might not want you looking after their children because of the colour of your skin. You hesitate to speak out against injustice because you don't want to be written off with negative labels that are often used. Then there's being confused with your other Black colleagues because you look the same, yet noticing how your colleagues are more accepting of you as a British-born nurse than of the nurses with the same ethnicity as you who are from abroad. Seeing very few people who look anything like you in senior positions and wondering whether your professional goals will ever be attainable. These are just slices of insight into how our lives are affected by the colour of our skin. So I think it's really important to also be aware of the individual impact and the huge impact that it has on some people and the everyday experiences. So the next, I just saw something on the chat, just checking that there was nothing I'm missing. Okay, because sometimes these things can be quite emotive and it can really trigger people's sort of, past experience, lived experiences. So I will say, actually, please feel free to put anything on the chat or afterwards contact me. I'm happy for Isaac to share my email details if you wanted to ask anything or share anything with me. So this next slide, so this is actually from a really an article which I often refer to. Now, if you're interested in reading a little bit more about the impact of unconscious bias in healthcare, I would encourage you to have a look. I'll put the link on there, but it's also at the end in the slide. So I've taken this slide from there, and it's thinking about ways how we can mitigate our unconscious bias particularly in our environment, in our workplace, in educational environments that we work in. And there are different strategies. I mean, they're sort of grouped into different groups: organisational, individual, or both. I want to focus a little bit on the organisational sort of activities, and really a lot of it comes down to cultural, organisational, systemic changes. And so for that really we need leadership commitment to this change. it's really important to sort of learn from experiences, have a willingness to learn, to grow and change, but also be proactive, having reflected on different people's experiences, having listened, having taken the time to reflect, be proactive in making these changes. And in particular, when you're looking at things like selection processes, appraisals, but also everyday interactions within the teams, between members. And really meaningful diversity training. We all have to go through the mandatory EDI tick box training tool, and it is better, certainly better than it was when I started this role, sort of 2-3 years ago. And there's lots more out there. So I think it's really important to not just tick the box and do the mandatory, but try and expand on your own sort of learning and knowledge and cultural competence, which is that's what we call it. And there's lots of resources. Obviously, we'll talk a little bit about what we can do as individuals, thinking about self-reflection, our own biases, and having awareness, thinking about other things, so mentorship and sponsorship. So there's, lots of this around, but certainly when new members are coming in, members who may be, as I said, we talk about the outgroup, who maybe are new to the environment, might have a feeling of feeling a bit marginalised because of who they are, their background. Think about mentorship, think about supporting, think about inclusive sort of practices to try and improve their experience and learn from them, from every, allow a learning opportunity for everybody. Culture, humility, curiosity, as I said, ask questions, be inquisitive, challenge your own thoughts, challenge yourself, and really be intentional in diversifying environment. Again, this is taken from the same paper. So this is really a very sort of basic flow chart really on what we can do ourselves. So the first thing really is about being aware, really being very aware that we all have biases. We all carry them. It's part of our own human makeup and nature. Wouldn't be who we are if we didn't have them. And that's normal. That's important to accept. So be aware of that. And it's what we call our intuition, our autopilot. So that's what keeps us going and functioning. But when we're thinking about decisions, when we're thinking about interactions with certain people or certain groups, that you think, actually, am I thinking systematically here? Or am I just prejudging? Am I using my kind of quick thinking without actually analysing what's going on? And be open to new experiences. If you're unsure if you're saying the right thing or doing the right thing, making the right decision, ask, inquisitive, seek knowledge. What if you accidentally or unintentionally commit a microaggression? Well, own it. Be aware that be aware of the impact it has had. The intention may not have been there to do harm, but be aware of the impact that it may well have done some harm. Acknowledge it, own them, and then reinforce and repair people. So that's when we talk a little bit about being an active bystander, making sure we call things out, reflect, but also repair. So just to summarize, really, we need to all accept that we all have biases. That's just a part of our makeup. We need to be confident, and that will allow us, hopefully, to gain confidence in challenging the stereotypes that exist and that we might use ourselves and that we see in an organisation. That part of that is really to try and change the culture, change the organisation culture, change the way you automatically behave with others, your perception and the relationships that you form and have. Allow that, try and proactively change that. Again, when you think about different micro behaviours, so these are different mannerisms, different kind of, attitudes to others and behaviours. Think a bit more proactively at how we might manage that. And that is really about kind of reflective thinking. Think before you speak, think before you may take a decision, think before. Those sorts of things can affect it. We talked a bit about being an active bystander. If you see something that you doesn't feel right, call it out. That doesn't mean stand up and say stop and sort of point the finger. There's different ways of doing that, but don't go and let it go ignored. Bypass. Try and take some sort of action, proactive action. And then thinking about how we manage our emotional and cognitive loads. So that's really thinking about our kind of the way we make decisions, thinking, is this my emotions leading my decision from past experiences, or am I actually thinking cognitively about this and analysing and realising the impact and the origin of my decision? And then the last slide is just a couple of links, which I think I would, if I do anything, probably the TED talk by Yasmin Abdul-Majid, which is What Does My Head Scarf Mean to You, is really I found it really interesting, and I think it's really good to listen. It's only 14 minutes long, so not too long. So definitely, if you've got a bit of time, you're interested, have a look at that. I've also put some books on there which I reference to, and I think if you're something that if you're into, that again, I'd recommend those 3 books as well as part of yes, definitely can share the slides. I've got a question. Sorry, yeah, more than happy to do that. And then the implicit association test. So this is something that's been around for a long time. It's free to access. It's just online. The link, you can follow the link there. And this is sort of a test for yourselves to do, to look at your potential unconscious biases that we might have as individuals. Your results don't go anywhere, and you just keep it, and it gives you a little bit of information. There are some flaws. It's not, like all these things, they're not 100% foolproof. But if you do it, and actually, if you do it certain different times of the year, or however what mood you're in, it can change a little bit. But actually, if you do it as it's described, it does gives a little bit of insight to your own implicit and unconscious biases. So it's something might be worth doing, and you can put it on your portfolio PDP. So that's my last slide, and I think I'm about 2 minutes from the end. So I want to make sure I stick to time. Any other questions? I haven't been keeping an eye on the chat because I've got my presentation up, but I'll leave that slide there. And anybody, is there a hand up or anything on the chat?
No, there was applause up for you, Silvana. Really good talk and very relevant. And I like the way that you made it relevant for us in the NHS as well. But there were no specific questions on the chat. There is time for people to raise your hand and ask questions, or even put in the chat box if you want now. Um, um, but we'll also give 1 or 2 minutes for people to just share a learning point or two, if they've picked up anything from this session, just to kind of reinforce what we just heard. Really useful session. Let me start with sharing what I've learned. I really like the last line of the video that you played. The lady said, "We can't cure unconscious bias, but if you're aware of it, we can address it." And I think that's really key. That this is part of us. This is what part of who we are and our upbringing. So we can't cure it, but we can also address it. And I also really like that Nursing Times article that you mentioned about what how she said that racism is not necessarily the words, the racist words that come out, but it's the behavior, and it's the preconceptions and the biases that people have towards people of different races. That was quite interesting as well. So I really thank some comments in the session. Really good session. Challenge myself more for assumptions. Love the idea of being an active bystander. Um, um, uh, Thinking about psychological impact of being in a system that expects you to fail. Really interesting as well from that Nursing Times article. Thank you for the illustrative talk. Eyes opening. Will we get the slides? The video will be up on the BSW Training Hub website in a couple of days' time. Episode 1 is already up, and today is episode 2. So you can access it on the BSW Training Hub website in a couple of days. There was a previous session, Simisola, which you can access on the BSW Training Hub website. If you go up on the chat, Rachel very kindly put the link for that session on the chat. Any other thoughts that people would like to share?
Oh, yeah, I have there's another comment here from Rachel. I have the scope of work for us as leaders in NHS shows that 43.60% of our staff feel that their organisations still have work to do to make them feel safe. Yeah. I know. I mean, I guess it is a sort of stark statistic actually, and there's lots of other ones from the NHS survey report. It's worth looking at that report. But there are some improvements compared to the previous years, and the REST report on race equality and also disability equality are really interesting to look at. I'm happy to share the link. But yeah, it's for all of us to work on, I think. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thank you. And I think we'll close the session there. And hopefully that has recorded on our hard drive, and this will be available for access later on in the session, later in the week. Thank you so much again for joining. Thank you, Silvana, so much for your talk.
Thank you, everybody. Have a lovely day.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. They're here. Bye.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Isaac.